What are the wetlands? We will trek through the different zones of this ecosystem, learning the diverse roles that wildlife play, along with how wetlands and humans naturally help each other.
I've lived out here for about 10 years now. I grew up in a small town called Menifee, which is a suburb of Riverside. I'd always grown up playing in the dirt, engaging with the natural world in fun ways. Growing up out there, large undeveloped space like this wasn't exactly in short supply. So when I moved to Long Beach and found that there weren't many places like this left, it felt like a natural place to kind of pair myself with. My name is Daniel North, and I am the Stewardship Program Coordinator for the Los Cerritos Wetlands Stewardship Program. Basically, what that means is I am responsible for coordinating all of our stewardship events that invite the public or the community to do volunteer restoration work in the wetlands.
The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency defines a wetland as areas where water covers the soil or is present either at or near the surface of the soil all year or for varying periods of time. Because of the regular presence of water, the plants that live in the wetlands are called hydrophytes. Wetlands can be either inland, such as tree-filled bayous and swamps, or coastal, such as local Los Cerritos and Bolsa Chica wetlands.
A tidal wetland, what's nice about this type of terminology is that it's not designed to trick you in any way. Tidal wetlands are influenced by tidal systems. So if you were to look out over this water body, throughout the whole day, you would see that the tides rise and fall twice a day, like along the coast.
In Southern California, the level of the water moves up and down the shoreline, reaching a high or low point approximately every 6 hours. These changes can be as little as 1 vertical foot or as great as 7 vertical feet.
And because of that tidal influence, these plant communities and hydrology and so many things about the ecology of this area is influenced, by that tide rising and falling.
One of the most evident features of a tidal wetland is the vegetated community of plants surrounding the edge of the wetlands, the salt marsh. The plants that make their homes here are specially adapted to deal with the challenges of being regularly flooded by the salty tides. When the tides are low, the mudflats are exposed. From afar, they seem just as exciting as a ghost town, but up close, they are teeming with life. 8,000 years ago, Native American tribes used these coastal wetlands as a source of food. Grizzly bears, deer, antelope, and many other animals lived in the region. In the 1700s, the Spanish were colonizing parts of California, and the ranchos were being built. In 1848, California became a part of the United States, and citizens began to flood to California. Between the 1500s and 1900s, over 85% of California wetlands were destroyed or altered. In 1895, a duck hunting preserve was opened in Bolsa Chica, and because the tidal flow was inconvenient for hunting, a dam was built that blocked the seawater from flowing into the wetlands. This changed the salt marsh to a series of freshwater ponds. In the early 1900s, oil was discovered in Huntington Beach, and in 1940, oil was drilled in the wetlands and continues to this day. During World War II, the military built and stored artillery batteries on this land, along with building long-range gun emplacements on the bluff. The footprints of some of these relics still make their home in the wetlands today. In 1961, the state of California bought the beach and it became Bolsa Chica State Beach. In 1973, land was deeded to Bolsa Chica Ecological Reserve, and the dam built in 1895 was replaced by a tide gate to allow the ocean water to enter the bay. The Department of Fish and Game began working on restoration efforts to build 2 nesting islands in the bay. In 1997, the state purchased 880 portions of the Bolsa Chica for wetland restoration, and since 2004, over 500 acres of the lowlands in Bolsa Chica have been restored to their 1800s condition.
For wetlands at large, a really important date, the 1953 to 1956 range, which is when wetlands really started to gain traction. It became a real discipline of ecology in a sense. Nobody was really calling wetlands at the time. They were really just called swamps, and people thought, they were this useless piece of land that was just begging to be turned into something else. In Southern California alone, we've lost about 95% or more of our coastal wetlands, and if we had realized the services they provided at the time, we probably would have saved a greater amount of them. Los Cerritos wetlands particularly, in October, I believe, of 2009, was when the first stewardship event was hosted in these wetlands, and that's when the community was really invited to come out here and be a part of the change that was happening in this area.
Why did people start buying and restoring wetlands in California? In order to understand one of the major roles of wetlands, we must first understand the carbon cycle. The carbon cycle is the transfer of carbon between the atmosphere, plants, and animals. Carbon is released into the atmosphere by humans, other animals, and burning fossil fuels. Carbon is absorbed by bodies of cool water and by plants during photosynthesis.
Wetlands are actually a really important part of the carbon cycle, at least locally. Areas produce more atmospheric carbon. We're in Long Beach right now, so there's a lot of atmospheric carbon produced by cars driving by. We're in a really dense area, and then things like that pump carbon in the air. As atmospheric carbon comes from its various sources, it needs to kind of get absorbed or taken out of the air, because we all know that rising CO2 is not the best thing for climate change, and there's a balance that needs to be kind of met. So the more natural areas that we have, like wetlands, they're able to absorb atmospheric carbon. It's called a carbon sink. The environmental pressures of a wetland, there's a lot of surface area, there's a lot of water, so that's pretty ideal for the plants that can live in those unique habitats. And their ability to deal with salt allows them to exploit this niche. And because they can cover so much area, they produce a lot of plant biomass, and that plant biomass absorbs a lot of atmospheric carbon.
Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, which allows sunlight to reach the Earth's surface, keeping temperatures at a range where life can exist. But too much greenhouse gas leads to global warming. With the increase of burning fossil fuels to power cars, planes, and power plants, there has been an increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. At the same time, deforestation releases carbon dioxide from decaying plants and eliminates a natural source of carbon removal from the atmosphere. Higher amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere lead to higher amounts of trapped heat, leading to the rise of global temperatures. Wetlands are an excellent system of carbon sequestering, or carbon sinks. The plant stores excess carbon through photosynthesis. By restoring wetland habitat, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere can be reduced.
So why should people care about wetlands? It really depends on someone's value system. If you answer it as what do they do for the natural world? Obviously it's a unique habitat for animals that exclusively live in these areas. They're nursery habitats for maturing fish. They are part of the pathway along the Pacific coast for the Pacific flyway, so they're important for migratory birds. If people care about the natural world and the health of natural communities, then that's why they're important to people. But if you want to know how they affect people directly, if you consume fish, we are part of the ocean's food web, so having a nursery habitat for fish that we may not consume directly, but they support the food web that eventually ends up at us. It's really important to have places like this supporting the ocean, and they're also designed to absorb large amounts of water. the water can be taken here as opposed to ending up where people are and, causing water damage or any other, problems for folks. There's never been a better time for people to get involved, and no matter where they are along the coast, find out where their local wetlands are and find out what kind of opportunities they have for, contributing to places like this.
Wetlands aren't just a place. They're a globally important system with hundreds of parts working together as one.